Hello, Garland Nixon. I'm back, and we are fortunate to have with us the great Laith Marouf. We're going to find out what's going on in West Asia. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. And look, here's something that's very important before we get going. Freepalestine.video. That's the website. Remember this, spread it around, share it with everyone. It's freepalestine.video. Laith Marouf has and his group, they've got a website. They are putting out English speaking information to help those of us who aren't familiar with the region, who don't speak the local languages or really understand the culture that well, to get an understanding in English in a way that people in the West can really understand what's going on in West Asia. And when you go to freepalestine.video, remember they're under attack by any number of powerful imperial forces. They're going to need your help to keep this thing going. So go to freepalestine.video and make sure you donate as much as you can to keep this thing going and to do the right thing and help. There are a lot of people that are feeling, they're upset, they're angry, they're anxious, and they're like, man, I just feel, I hear people say this, I'm angry because I can't do anything. Well, you can do something. Go to freepalestine.video and you can help the cause there and donate whatever you can afford. All right, Laith, let's get going. Let's start here. I saw an article this morning where the Russians are condemning an attack, the Israeli attack on Tehran's consulate in Damascus, where the Biden administration, of course, as always, we weren't warned, that we had no idea. I guess, of course, we know they didn't know anything about Nord Stream. They knew nothing about the attack in Moscow as usual. And of course, they know nothing about, these people never know anything about anything for some reason. But eventually we always find out that their hands are dirty. So your thoughts on the consulate and the claim of the U.S. empire that we had no idea, they didn't warn us, but they didn't condemn it afterwards. At any rate, the attack on the consulate, what's happening? What's that mean as far as escalation, Laith Marouf?
Well, first off, the Israelis announced earlier today that they told the Americans as the jets are taking off, supposedly not before, but just as the jets are taking off. But let's also remember that the United States delivered F-35s and all these huge bombs over the last week. And in this attack, it was F-35s that were used because the Israelis were too scared to use F-15s to do this attack, because the last time the Israelis attempted to actually attack at a sensitive site, not just military air defenses or something like that, the Syrian military shot down an F-15 and chased other jets over occupied Palestine with their air defenses. That was like 4 or 5 years ago now. So what we see here is a deliberate use of the most advanced weapons that were just delivered to the Israelis to implicate the United States, even if Biden is too senile to realize what's happening. Clearly, those who are around him, who are professed Zionists like Blinken and others, knew that Israel is going to use these F-35s and the missiles that were delivered to them to attack something of huge significance. And as we see right now, it is the Iranian embassy in Damascus. The embassy is on one of the main highways in Damascus, it's in the Mezza area, where much of all of the foreign embassies are stationed there. A few of my aunts had homes just behind this Iranian embassy. I grew up in this area, going back and forth when we'd go in the summer to Syria as kids. And to see this residence of the embassy leveled down with 7 missiles. This is not one missile, not two, not three. This is 7 missiles. As the Iranians were sitting down for breaking the fast. This was a gathering of Iranian representatives in Syria for breaking the fast. Again, this is, imagine somebody doing something like this on Shabbat or what have you, waiting for somebody to come for their prayers before they kill them. This is the crazy mindset of the Zionists. We know currently that of the people that were martyred, there is 2 brigadier generals and 1 4-star general. This is, the top military advisors that Iran has, below Soleimani, who was assassinated. General Soleimani was assassinated by Trump. And these are also veterans of the Iraq-Iran war. These are considered some of the most decorated military officials in the Iranian army, and these are people that are close friends to the Ayatollah in Iran. So we heard since the morning the Iranians saying that the response is coming. The Ayatollah himself tweeted saying that he authorized the response. Last night, all night, there was a meeting of the top officials of Iran to study the plans of a retaliation. And in all the statements of Iran, they are blaming the United States directly for this attack. I don't know what will be the response, but I'll tell you what, the minute it happened, all I can think about is that the Israeli embassy in either Jordan and or Azerbaijan will be leveled down. These are both countries that are collaborating with the Israelis. And we heard a statement by the Popular Mobilization Units in Iraq. An official statement came out, said that they are ready to arm 12,000 fighters in Jordan to open this front and to cut the supply line to the land supply line to Israel, that they have all the medium, light, and heavy weapons ready for anyone that wants to carry. They're ready to arm 12,000 fighters inside Jordan, and they're waiting for the signal from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and or groups in Jordan to take the offer on. This is, I think right now, probably the most scared person beyond Netanyahu is probably the king of Jordan right now. He's shaking in his boots. He doesn't know if his country is gonna exist once this response of Iran starts.
I also think, and this is one of the way I look at it, I see this as a move of desperation by Israel, as a move of we're in deep and serious trouble. They're doing a lot of talk. Oh, we're going to attack, Rafah. We're going to attack Lebanon. We're going to attack everyone, right? But their country is in disarray. The people are in the street angry at Netanyahu. The people all over the West are in the street pressuring their governments, and Israel is not winning the war. It seems to me a desperation Hail Mary move to say, you know what? We got to try to do something to get the U.S. involved, because other than that, we have no chance. I do think that there will be a response, maybe asymmetric, but I still think that the resistance is far smarter wiser is the word I want to use, than Israel. And in the same way that the Ukrainians has repeatedly tried to bait the Russians into attacking, whatever, one of the NATO countries, or doing something, that Russia has been slow and steady and recognized that we're winning. But they've, taken action when they needed to. I think the resistance also recognizes they're winning, and they'll be measured, and they'll act in a way that doesn't grant the wishes of Israel. But I do think they will act in a way that's decisive. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's clear that the Israelis lost the war in Gaza. They've lost the war with Lebanon. it's not a full-out war, but they've lost that battle. The possibility, if they right now commit to a complete ceasefire and exchange of prisoners of war, it's clear that this would have led to an internal collapse of the Zionist colony and an end of this project and liberation of Palestine without much more bloodshed. And this is why I know myself, and I know most of those supporting the axis of resistance were getting really anxious about, seeing all this genocide happening in Gaza, that the axis of resistance hasn't taken full-scale war measures and entered a battle with the Zionists. But clearly, if we calm ourselves down, our emotions down, and analyze it, there was no need up until now. Although with all these deaths and genocide, yes, it's a huge thing, but ultimately you don't design your actions in war by emotions. You design them through calculations of what is happening on the battlefield and how your enemy is holding up. And as I was saying before, Israel was ready to collapse the minute this war stops. Even if not, Lebanon doesn't enter, even if Iran doesn't enter, Israel is done for it. There will be no more Zionist colony in Palestine. It's a given now, okay? And so what is Netanyahu trying to do here? He knows that the United States have decided that they will not go into a direct war with Lebanon to defend Israel. In the mind of the American generals and American government, Israel is supposed to be able to take care of herself in the face of Hezbollah. They are facing Yemen on behalf of Israel, but up until now, it's clear that they will not go directly into war, into defending Israel, except and only except if Iran enters the war. So this is the interest of Netanyahu. He wants to force Iran into a war with him so he can drag the American army into the war. But I don't know what will be the decision of that was taken yesterday by the command of the Iranian government. But all of it must come into the calculation of what they're going to decide to do, and this is why I think it will not be not directly hitting Israel, although they can. Most probably they will hit one of its embassies in either of those two treacherous countries, Azerbaijan or Jordan.
Yeah, I think and I think we've seen this with Russia, and that is look, they're winning. They're winning. So what they have to do as a response to maintain the respect of their populace, their populace feels like, hey, they have disgraced us, and they expect the government to, stand up for them and to maintain some level of respect for so internally they have to act. But I think, as you said, the fact of the matter is war is terrible. These things are horrible. But they understand what their options are. You know what I mean? They recognize their options. So I think that I'm with you. We'll see a measured response. We'll see a measured retaliation. They ain't losing. They don't have to act in desperation. Let's talk about what's happening on the border. I've been reading continually. Again, as people say, we hear out this, well, how come Hezbollah is not acting more? How come some of the resistance forces aren't acting more? If the things that I read every day, I read of important positions, important technical positions hit by Lebanon. It seems to me that Hezbollah. That one of the things that they're doing is continually degrading the military and technical assets of Israel, so that if the time comes that they do have a direct confrontation, technologically speaking, militarily speaking, they'll have weakened Israel so much that it'll be much more difficult. It's like a plan that if we've got to fight, I'm just going to keep not punching away at your foundation. And if you do, number one, will deter you from attacking me, because your assets in the area that you would need to attack me are getting weaker and weaker. And number two, if you do, I weaken you. So it seems like a strategy that has a long-term concept going on here, Laith.
You're absolutely correct. And so let's look at what happened over the last week in between Lebanon and northern Palestine. The Zionists have been going crazy on targeting civilian targets. They hit 4 different civil defense offices. Civil defense meaning firefighters and paramedic gathering locations in South Lebanon. In one hit, they killed 6 paramedics. In another, they killed 2. And today morning, they hit another location of civil defense unit in the south of Lebanon, killing another paramedic. So they are just targeting these civilian targets, and at the same time, they kept on going further and further in their attacks, the Zionists. So they attacked around the Baalbek historical site in the center of Lebanon, in the Bekaa Valley. And they also hit all the way to the north at the border with Syria, in the Hermel area. And again, all the targets were civilian. A olive oil press co-op where all the farmers in the area bring their olives to press them, heavy machinery, oil machinery factory, and what have you. So constantly the targets we see the Israelis attacking are civilian and or old targets from a list of targets from 2006. For instance, I went last week to one of the locations they hit in Baalbek, and it's an old Hezbollah office that has been evacuated for years. Okay, so they have no update on their list of targets since 2006, and they're hitting randomly targets that don't have any value currently because Hezbollah either emptied those offices or they haven't been in use in ages. So that's how the Israelis are acting in Lebanon. In retaliation, Hezbollah has been targeting over the last 6 months, they destroyed all the frontline bases, all the surveillance equipment and everything. And, in the last 3 months, they started hitting the second line bases. And for the last week, they bombarded all the command centers that are like 30 kilometers away from the border. The main northern command center for all military activities totally destroyed. The command center for the west region of the north, the command center in the Golan, all destroyed. They have literally carpet bombed these bases. There's nothing left of them, to the point where currently Israeli forces are gathering in creating these temporary gathering points or command points in open areas in the forests, and this is making them even more easier targets to hit. And every time they try to build or gather their forces in one region, they're getting destroyed. So ultimately, with this targeting of the main control bases in the back line and the destruction of much of the bases in the Golan Heights, the Israeli occupied Golan Heights are the vantage point that in a war you need to maintain control of the land. So we expect that in any war that comes, that the Golan will be one of the first major clash point. And I'm going to connect this to our first question about the assassination, the attack on the Iran embassy. The generals that were assassinated have been the main coordinators of activities of the Axis of Resistance in Syria and in Lebanon. So it seems like the Israelis not only wanted to provoke Iran into something, they also wanted to, put pressure because of the constant attacks on the Golan Heights. And I think right now, clearly, Iran and Hezbollah will have to respond in kind because of how things are connected to each other.
Let me ask you this, if you could comment on this. So we see in Moscow, right, the Crocus attack, and of course it's so-called ISIS-K or whoever is involved, and the U.S. knows nothing about it, but there's assertions that they work for the U.S. empire. Recently, here within the last day or so, we see Israel attacking Syria, and basically at the exact same time, it's almost like not almost like a coordinated attack where ISIS attacks Syria as Israel attacks Syria. We see the ISIS attack and bomb Iran. There seems to be a really interesting state of actions here, wherein I would think that there would be no more tempting target for ISIS based on ideological concerns than the U.S. empire. But oddly enough, they always seem to take actions that are in the interest of the U.S. empire. Your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, this was a tragic, attack and loss for the civilians in Russia. It is such a disgusting thing to target civilians because, as we see, the Israelis do the same thing. And of course, you mentioned the attacks on Aleppo earlier this week when the Israelis conducted air raids flying over Jordan, over the Tanaf American occupation base in the triangle between Syria, Iraq, and Jordan, and fired from there so they got as close as possible, basically, to Aleppo from the air to fire these missiles, and they were protected by American air defenses under them. And to see that those attacks and they used multiple heavy load missiles. There was huge explosions that haven't been felt in Aleppo since the end of the major battles in the city in 2016. So to see that happen, and then to see how Al-Qaeda, Wahhabi chameleon Contras attack immediately the Aleppo region with drones and with missiles. This shows you how much coordination there is between these Wahhabis and the Zionists. They're all, Wahhabis, Zionists, and Nazis are all the attack dogs of Western imperialism, Muslim supremacists, Christian supremacists, Jewish supremacists in those ways. And finally, we see right now, of course, countries like Russia and China start speaking about the Wahhabi death squads as a tool of the CIA. We heard them before speak in those terms, but it wasn't clear. Now we see that alignment in thought between the axis of resistance and China and Russia on those files. How long will the U.S. be able to use these Wahhabi death squads, and Israel use them also? I don't think for long, because as we see, much of them were these Wahhabi death squads were minced in the battlefield of Syria and Iraq, and now whatever leftovers of them were dragged into Ukraine, and they're getting minced there. I feel the only reason that Syria or Russia didn't clear up Idlib from these Wahhabi death squads is because there's so many other fronts open. They're so weak right now, these Wahhabi death squads. And I think Syria is just worried about a full war with Israel, and if it's engaged with the Wahhabi death squads, how Damascus will be more exposed with less military force there. So for now, they're being left in the corner because nobody has time to deal with them.
Yemen. There's an interesting article here in Pearls and Irritations. Yemen's Indian Ocean checkmate. Ansar Allah has single-handedly disrupted global shipping power dynamics. Here's the interesting thing. Everyone's heard about the bridge that collapsed in Baltimore area. I live in the suburbs outside of Baltimore. From my house to that bridge is 12 minutes drive. right now, less than 5 miles, just over 5 miles. I fish that bridge. I do a lot of fishing. The creek where I live is, you put on, it's starting in my creek, you go around the corner, you come right out at the key, right, it empties out at the Key Bridge. I am very, very close to the Key Bridge. When I read about this ship that hit the bridge, one of the interesting things is that the ship was in Baltimore, and a lot of things are going on as a result of what's happening in Yemen. That Yemen is affecting shipping so much that Maersk Line had to like rent ships like you rent cars. And so there are a lot of things going on as a result of what's happening in the Red Sea. Now combine that with what's happened in Baltimore, that is one of the, I think, the ninth largest port in the U.S., a very, very significant port here in the United States. It seems to me that the work of Ansar Allah is very, very significant and having a dramatic effect on the world. Your thoughts on the conflict in the Red Sea? And as we've discussed, I'll add this, and it's changing the dynamics of naval warfare forever, due to their ability to use technology to thwart a navy as powerful as the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that crash into the bridge in Baltimore, and I was like, wow. I mean, this must have been a total failure, not only from the ship captain and the stuff, but also the whole traffic control of in this very important seaway. So and to then hear the Americans talk about that it's going to take them 10 years to rebuild this bridge. My brain blew up when I was like, "What? 10 years? That would be like another generation of people." And look at what happened with the Kerch bridge after it was blown up by the Ukrainians. It was up within days. Similarly, look at how fast China builds these bridges. Maybe they should just hire China to do it for them. And
That's what I was thinking. That's what,
yeah.
And actually, all jokes aside, if they were really concerned first and foremost about that issue, that's what they do. If you need your pipes fixed, you go get a plumber. Go get someone that's specialty. But they're not going to do that because that would be an admission of the problems here. It's going to take them longer to clear out the mess from the bridge than it would take China to build a new one.
Oh yeah, and of course they don't want to, take away the chance for somebody to pocket some money about it. Infrastructure in Canada and the U.S. These contracts are the biggest funnelers of public money out of the pocket. I mean, I remember in Montreal, I lived 27 years in Montreal. Every year they would strip all the asphalt off the streets in downtown, and every year they put it again, and you're like, what's happening here? And if some of our viewers may remember this, in 2012 the mayor of Montreal City and all the council, the city council, and the mayors and city councils of both cities on the size of Montreal, Laval and Brossard, were all rounded up and put in jail because it turned out that they have been, with the help of the mafia and the mafia that's in the union of public workers, have been putting the lowest grade asphalt at the highest price in the world, the lowest grade asphalt in the world, at the highest price in the world, to put it in the streets of Montreal with snow, meters of snow every winter, and very cold. And of course, the new mayor comes in and new council comes in, and they make contracts with their own buddies, and it continues. It didn't stop, So this is what is public contracting in the West is. It's an amazing scam. But coming back to Yemen, with so little resources, now look at the scam of American weapons sales. I mean, these ships that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to put in the water and then rusting within a few weeks, or falling apart, as is happening in the UK. While Yemen, with its very low budget, is able to build these, drones and hypersonic missiles and ballistic missiles that can hit these hundreds of millions of dollars warships at the least cost, and impossible to track where they were fired from. They're so small devices, you can transport easily, you can fire them everywhere. And we are seeing an end of 600 years of Western domination of the globe through naval power. We're also seeing a liberation of a whole ocean. You mentioned the Indian Ocean. Yemen can now hit any target in the Indian Ocean, not only close to its coast. So that's a liberation of a whole ocean from American and Western control. And as we, get bigger and bigger in terms of our engagement in this war, we don't know what's going to happen right now after this attack on the Iranian embassy. It is very likely that Yemen will then choose to sink these aircraft carriers and destroyers. They have been choosing right now to just disrupt the shipping at the least confrontation. But if it's an all-out war, Yemen will be not holding back, and we will see American and Western warships sinking.
We've also seen Yemen and the Iraqi resistance strike locations in occupied Palestine, the port of Eilat or Eilat, whatever it is, deep in the occupied territories. And I think, and they usually strike them with a missile or two, and they hit a point. I tend to believe that these are, elbow brushbacks, as they say, right? That these are reminders that what they're saying to Israel is, look, we're hitting you. We can do a lot more damage if we want to. That's a missile here and there. Imagine if it were 100, and we can do it. We can hit you anywhere we want. So I think part of that is a message to Israel, message that Israel, I think, wants to pretend that they don't get the message, but they get the message. And I think that's why they're doing everything they can to drag the U.S. into it, because we're seeing they have Western anti-aircraft. They have Western anti-missile technology. And as we're seeing in Ukraine, it's worthless. It just gets blown up. So what are your thoughts on the missile strikes that have been happening from like 1,000 kilometers by non-state actors who are very, very technologically advanced? Your thoughts on these missile strikes throughout occupied Palestine?
Yeah, I mean, it was the most amazing attack by the Iraqi resistance that hit Eilat or Mirashrash on the Gulf of Aqaba, the most southern point of Palestine, because they fired these drones over Jordan, and the American air defenses missed them. They flew over the whole of Palestine to reach the southern point, and they hit the naval command center of the Israeli Navy in Eilat, in the Aqaba Gulf. So this is a failure of American air defenses, Jordanian air defenses, Israeli air defenses, and it flew these 700 somewhat plus, maybe almost 1,000 kilometers from Baghdad all the way to the south of Palestine and hit its target precisely. The videos are amazing, seeing these explosions in the central command of the Israeli Navy in the Aqaba Gulf. So we can add to it what I said before, that the Iraqi resistance right now is saying it's ready to arm 12,000 fighters inside Jordan. You can see that the Iraqi resistance have now become a very prominent part of this axis of resistance in this battle for the liberation of Palestine. On the other side, we see constantly Yemen firing these missiles and drones and ballistic missiles all the way to Palestine. They've hit their targets so many times, they become now usual. For us to see Iraq doing it, now there's something new. And as I said, maybe on your show 2 weeks ago, the Iraqi resistance, for the most part, have been for the last month or so targeting the Golan Heights. So now we have The Lebanese resistance, the Iraqi resistance, and the Syrian resistance, all concentrating their fire on the Golan Heights. That again gives us an idea of where this is going to be a battlefield in the future war.
Something I'd like to ask you about. I've been reading about the Turkey elections in Turkey. The Erdogan's party took a bit of a thrashing, and I don't understand Turkish politics at all. There's conflicting, weird kind of things going on there, particularly with Erdogan. Maybe if you could explain what's going on in Turkey, why the results are, like they are, what it all means.
Yeah, I mean, look, their federal and presidential elections happened just 2 years ago, and Erdogan and his party had a landslide win. And so to see so close to that election that they lose all major cities and major provinces in the provincial legislators and their city councils and mayoral positions, all are right now in the opposition hand. That shows you that there was something particular that irked the electorate. And the only thing that we can think about is clearly this war in Gaza and its effect on the economy and the continued, just talk by Erdogan in support of the Palestinian people and what have you, while he continues to sell, to ship products to Israel. Turkey currently right now is the number one exporter to Israel during this war. They almost 90 some odd percent of oil that is consumed in Israel comes through Turkey. It's Iraqi and Syrian looted oil, as well as Azerbaijani oil and gas, all going through Turkey and then shipped to the Zionist colony. In fact, the specific fuel that you need for jet fighters, almost all of it is coming through Turkey. So if Turkey only stops the deliveries of jet fuel, there will be no more Israeli Air Force bombardment of Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. So the electorate have punished Erdogan for his cheap talk, for his two-facedness. The opposition parties that won, they all have similar positions in terms of their social, programs that they want to put forward or their foreign policy, but they, much of them were talking about completely cutting off trade with Israel, and that's the only thing that Netanyahu and Erdogan, they're all the same. That's the only thing that Erdogan was refusing to do. So it is clear that the electorate in Turkey wanted Erdogan and his party to be punished for their double-facedness, and we already see demonstrations coming out in Istanbul and Ankara over the last 24 hours, nightly demonstrations calling for cutting the trade with Israel, and these people are more emboldened to do so because now these cities are run by opposition parties that will not set the police on the demonstrators.
I suspect that it's going to, let's say, for the sake of argument, we don't know how this conflict ends. But this attack on Gaza, I'm not even going to call it a conflict. It's not a conflict. It is an attack on the Palestinian people. But when this ends, I don't see how the Israeli government, the Israeli experiment can continue. The people in the region will not accept their governments working with Israel. The people throughout the world are not going to accept it. I mean, Israel always talked about, people want to destroy us, and the people in the region, they all just want to kill us and run us out. I think what they're going to find is the people worldwide are not going to accept the depravity. They're not going to accept the brutality, the viciousness, the inhumanity of this project any longer. Your thoughts?
Yeah, their reputation is ruined. if there
And
was
if you
anyone.
real quick, not to break you up, and if you could add that what happened in the Al Shifa hospital that people are finding out too, as a demonstration of what I'm talking about, that human beings are not going to accept.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a sad story. What happened in Al Shifa hospital. Every day we see these crimes in Gaza, and every day we think we saw the worst thing, and we get accustomed to it, and then the Zionists just throw something at you that you couldn't imagine happening, and again your senses are awakened. Um, they assassinated, liquidated 400 civilians, from medics and doctors and nurses and children, women inside the hospital. They just, were rounding them up, taking them down to the morgue and shooting them. Mass rapes were happening of female patients. Children were killed, and their bodies thrown outside Al Shifa hospital, and then run over by with tanks and bulldozers. It is horrendous. And Al Shifa hospital complex is you know constitutes maybe around 30% of the medical buildings in Gaza. So the destruction of this Al Shifa hospital complex means now there's practically zero hospitals in the Strip. This is a hospital that has been in existence prior to the creation of the Zionist colony. It has been attacked many times, including in the 1956 war and in the 1967 war by the Israelis. This is something that they've done many, many times over. And I would say that, the Israelis are purposefully targeting are the medical staff in Gaza. We saw just a few hours earlier today the World Kitchen organization there that was delivering aid to Gaza. They were traveling in Gaza within their marked cars. So they have already given their coordinates to the Israeli military and to the United Nations, a drone fired 3 missiles on their cars, killing all these foreign workers, Australian, Polish, UK, and these are all volunteers coming to bring aid to Gaza. So we see that the Israelis are purposefully targeting medical staff and anybody that has these skills to make the life of Palestinians even more miserable, to expose them to more diseases, to make it harder for anybody that got injured to survive, and to accelerate basically the genocide of the people in Gaza. Um, there was something else we were talking about before we mentioned the Shifa hospital in your question.
We were talking about I was saying the survival of the Zionist project post
Yes.
conflict. If there will ever be a time when we can call it post conflict, because I don't see how, with the Israelis doing the things that they're doing, that people will accept it and just walk away. But the possibility of survival of this Zionist project, which I don't
Yes.
see as a
So
possibility anymore. I think it has, more than anything else, there's a moral collapse. Let me change this. An exposure. It's not a collapse, because they've been doing these horrible things. The United States has been slaughtering people for many, many years. An exposure of the immorality of the U.S. empire in both Ukraine, and especially more so than ever in Gaza. And I don't
yes,
see how this thing survives.
look at prior to the beginning of this genocide in Gaza, already much of the world in Asia, in Africa and Latin America were on side with the Palestinian liberation. And now, with this genocide and doing it in such vicious ways, and to do it all in public, and to we've seen so much evidence, and then to have the Israelis constantly tell us, don't believe your eyes are anti-Semitic. Don't believe your ears are anti-Semitic. Don't believe numbers, math is anti-Semitic. Don't believe biology is anti-Semitic. At this point, they've lost the vast majority of humanity, including citizens of the empire, people in the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, even those people that may have been fooled through the mass propaganda that they're engulfed in, are now awake. And we got to this point where we see right now that the West is sacrificing propaganda that it had accumulated over decades. It's sacrificing its own reputation. It is sacrificing the theatrical rights it gave to its own citizens. It is destroying the social media platform empires that it built in order all to protect the reputation of the Zionist colony, and it's not working. Even right now, they want to ban TikTok. They're going to ban it just to save Israel, because I saw this study that was done of TikTok, and the accounts that had influence over the discussion on what's happening in Gaza and the war in Palestine, and the top account that had influence was called Free Palestine, and it had something like 9 million followers. And then in the top 20, there's only one pro-Zionist account at number 18, and so it had even a fraction. So they were so overwhelmingly defeated in this propaganda war on the social media that they'd rather actually probably ban all social media. People complain about not being able to get TikTok in Iran or China. Wait, you're not gonna get it in the United States anymore. It's because it's such it's not helping them. They thought that they can manipulate social media to cause these upheavals in other countries. It's actually going to cause upheaval in the West right now. So we're getting to that point, and there's no going back here. There's no going back. The only way to maintain Israel is through bloodshed and brutal suppression of all of humanity. And that's not going to happen. And whether this war stops right now or it continues till the last Israel is done for. The choice they have right now is, do they want to live in Palestine in peace with us, or do they want to die there or pack their bags and leave? There's no third choice.
Yeah, clearly I don't see how Israel survives, because I was reading 90% of the people who have left Israel are saying we're not going back, even if they may support the Zionist colony and all that crap. But the bottom line is this: people are not going to go to a place that's dangerous, and Israel is never going to be safe for the people again, based on what they're doing. Your thoughts on the region? The other part is this: there's a history in the region of governments who have been complicit with U.S. imperialism. Not just a history, there's a present of that. But I think that's going to get much more difficult. I think it's going to be much more difficult for regional leaders and regional power brokers to withstand the demand for justice from the people on the street. Your thoughts on how this is going to affect the dynamics between what we've seen for so many years, where the people on the street wanted one thing and the government wouldn't get them, and the government was able to suppress the people on the street. I think that's going to come to an end too. And the United States always says we want democracy in the world, which they don't. Well, the problem is they're going to get it, because to me, democracy is, of course, the rule of the people. But I think this is going to create a dynamic where that cannot be held back any longer in West Asia. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was reading earlier that Blinken is flying right now to Saudi Arabia, and he wants to finalize the normalization deal with Saudi Arabia. Obviously, he's crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Western media that covered it are also crazy, because this is gone. It's never going to come back. Not because MBS or the Saud family don't like to, kiss their master's hand, but because it's impossible to do right now. And if there is a pause, maybe in the genocide, maybe they'll do it. But currently, it's impossible for them to do it. So why would Blinken fly to Saudi Arabia right now? I think it's really to figure out what's going to happen as a response from Iran to an attack on its embassy. The other thing that we need to point out here is that obviously all these Gulf countries are manufactured states that didn't exist prior to the British creating them. The elite in them have been maintained, the governing families have been maintained through force of the UK and the United States. There's been, multiple attempts at revolutions in Iran, in Bahrain, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia over the decades. And the only reason that they were not successful is because of the direct involvement of British and American forces. Our viewers can go and read about the revolutions in Oman and in Bahrain in the 1960s and 70s, and even the revolution in Saudi Arabia. I'm going to bring this up. It's a historical fact. In 1979, the east of Saudi Arabia is where the oil is, but it's also where all the Shia are.
Mhm.
And this used to be a separate principality where the British, allowed the Saudis to gobble it up. And the ruling family there revolted in 1979, and they occupied Mecca and the Kaaba in the holy city. And what the Sauds did, the Saud family, is that they called the French and British paratroopers to land on top of the Kaaba, the holy house. The whole city of Mecca, no Muslim is allowed to enter it, non-Muslim. And what the Sauds did is they brought American and French troops, paratroopers, that landed on top of the Kaaba, the Black House, and slaughtered the people that took over the holy mosque, women and children and so on. It was a tribal kind of get together. They took it all. They didn't have much weapons. They just took over the mosque. They slaughtered them inside the mosque on behalf of the Saudis. Prophet Muhammad, when he entered Mecca at the end of his battle with the Meccan elite, he said, anyone that enters the mosque of Mecca is safe, whether they're Muslim or not. Anyone that closes their door in their home will not be harmed. And he forgave all the elite in Mecca that tried to kill him. So the Sauds family did the most unholy thing, the most un-Islamic thing, to kill people inside the holy mosque and to bring these French and British paratroopers. So currently, that's the only thing that is maintaining these families. So let's imagine ourselves in a happier time. Palestine has been liberated. The liberation of Palestine will lead directly to the unification of greater Syria. Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Iraq will be unified immediately if there's no Israeli colony. And, once that happens, Egypt will be part of this immediately. Remember, historically, Syria and Egypt are one region, the Fertile Crescent. And once you have that core of the Arabic people, 200 million out of the 500 million, of course, all the Gulf countries' ruling families will collapse, and it will all join. This is the future we all as humans should look forward to. Conglomeration on civilizational lines, all the Arabic world together, the sub-Saharan Africa together, Latin America together, Slavic countries together, and the West with it together. And now we will have a balance. Otherwise, if we're all these fragmented regional subcultures made into states, We will all be preyed on by the Western elite.
I do think that the leaders the uh, in West Asia, that many of them, as they say, rats jump off a sinking ship. And people who are in power, oftentimes, they're in power. They're not stupid. And I do think there will be leaders who will say, when they look at the U.S. empire completely crumbling, they're already starting to, they welcome Putin over, President Putin. They're flying planes, they got camels, they got, all kinds of things. I think they're sending a message also that, look, we understand that these people over here are kind of crumbling. And I do think there will be a number of leaders in the Gulf countries that say, we're going to walk. That rather than collapse and fall apart and go down with the U.S. empire, that when they see that ship crashing, they will jump off of it and say, look, we never even knew those guys. We weren't friendly with them. That when they look at what's happening in Africa, Niger, etc. They're saying to the U.S., we've had enough. We're all across Africa. The Senegal election, are you familiar with what just happened in Senegal?
Oh yes, the elections for the opposition won, and again this was the French spent so much money supporting the dictatorship in Senegal, even during this election campaign. But you see uh, the whole region is getting infected nicely
Yeah, this
with
young
good
guy won,
vibes.
right? A young opposition guy. He reminds me of
Yes.
like a Ibrahim Traore, 30 some years. We're seeing the Africans, a young, very young continent, that young revolutionary leaders are getting elected. And the first thing they're saying, and they're getting elected with an anti-French platform. They're saying, we want the French out. And the people are saying, we're down with you. Again, I think the leaders in a number of countries are going to simply see the writing on the wall and go in another direction. At any rate, continue with what you were saying about Senegal and Africa.
Yes, yes. So, Senegal is just beside Mali, and beside it is Niger. So this is like the if most western part of the Sahel region of Africa. They all speak, Swahili as a language. These are all again manufactured countries that were cut up by the French and the British. So it's clear that the infection of revolutionary behavior is spreading, and the more the axis of resistance in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, and Yemen attracts the attention, the military and intelligence and political attention of the West, the less time they have to manipulate countries in other regions and or control them. And this is what we are seeing. Because the West is spending all this time defending the Zionist colony, other regions are escaping their control. They don't have even enough people in the Secretary of State Department or in the Pentagon or in the CIA or what have you to follow up on every little country around the world. Now they have to they made all their activists look at Facebook and TikTok and try to chase the Palestinians there. This is where it's crazy. The United States is overstretched. And when the time comes for the liberation of Palestine and after the liberation of Palestine, it will be time for all of us on this planet as we escape from Western colonial rule to thank the Palestinian people, to thank the Arab peoples that have been bleeding for 80 years, millions and millions of Arabs that died in Libya, in Algeria, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Lebanon, all because we refused to bow down. And our blood, the blood of the Arabic people, is not only liberating us, it's liberating everybody on this planet. And the day will come when people will recognize this.
I believe also that when this is over, that Yemen will be a member of BRICS, that the time will come that Yemen will be a place that people go for tourism. to see the sights, to see the beautiful, beaches. And Yemen has a lot of beautiful, it's a beautiful country. But I believe that Yemen will be a very popular spot for people to go. And I do believe that the powerful countries in the world will flock to Yemen to invest. It will be a highly respected country. Your thoughts?
I love Yemen, and I've never been to it, but I'm trying to go in the next few weeks to Sana'a. And so I hope to report to you from firsthand what I saw
Wow.
there, and maybe we'll even do an interview live from there. But I can't wait. This is the most excited I've felt, visiting, getting ready to visit any country. I have not felt this childish about a stop, but it's not tourist, but going somewhere. I will report to you. Yemen is the origin of the Arabic people. It is the most proud nation in this area, and I'll try to bring you with me if I can.
Oh, I'd love to. What we see, something interesting also. I never thought something that you mentioned that I never even considered, and that is when we talk about an empire, then an empire grows, right? But what we see is an empire blossom and then contract, right? And I never thought about that contraction. And part of the blossoming was taking Ukraine and planning on taking Taiwan, right? Well, they're losing Ukraine. They're Syria, right? They were grabbing Syria. They lost Syria. We're going to grab Ukraine. They lost Ukraine. Now we see the empire and its vassals in Africa. They're getting kicked out. The Africans are saying, we had enough. You're out of here. And it seems to me that the Russians are supplying, and maybe quietly and not so quietly in some ways, it is in their interest to, and from a historical context, Russia, the Soviet Union, has worked with the Africans to free them from imperialism for decades now, and the Africans haven't forgotten. But your thoughts on that comment currently that you made maybe a couple months back about the contraction of the empire, and how, to me, it's getting more obvious that they're contracting.
Oh yes, oh yes. So they overstretched themselves trying to capture every state that escaped colonialism after.
Oh, 1 second, we've lost you again. Hold on one moment. Let me check one thing here, and then if that doesn't work, then okay. So do me a favor, Laith, sign out and sign back in. Can you hear me? Yeah, sign out and sign back in. That should work. Okay, we'll get Laith. We've had that issue before where Laith had to sign out and sign back in. Look, the people in Langley over at the CIA got to earn a living too. So I imagine they're doing everything they can to thwart us. But hopefully Laith will come right back on and we'll keep going. But Laith, so for those of you who don't know, we had a discussion a while back, and the discussion with Laith was, and he brought it up. There we go. All right, say something. There you go. I can hear you now.
Yeah,
Laith?
you're off.
Okay, continue. You were talking about the contraction of the empire.
Yes. At the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States rushed to try to capture any country that had escaped colonialism after the World War II. So we saw them destroy and take over Yugoslavia, Iraq, Grenada, blah 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 blah, and the last things being Libya and Syria. And in the battlefield of Syria, and of course they took Ukraine, but in the battlefield of Syria, it is there that the expansion reached the furthest, because they got defeated and Syria maintained half of the country. The United States controls the other half. And since that day, we've been seeing the retreat of the United States empire, with Russia taking back parts of Ukraine. That's the beginning of the retreat. And as we see right now, Yemen liberating all these waters, And now, if this war continues with the collapse of the Zionist colony, the United States will have to retreat all the way to its natural borders across from the Atlantic, because this is their frontline base, and without it, they will have to retreat fully. And this is what I think our viewers must understand, is that the United States is not protecting Israel because Jews control the United States, or because the United States loves Jews so much that it will do anything for them. No, the United States is doing this because it cannot survive as an empire without the crown jewel of imperial holdings, Palestine, being under its control.
Yeah, and what we're looking at, I think, is at one of the reasons that the empire is so furious at Russia. They're furious at Russia. Russia has to be stopped. Why? Because that's what halted them in their when they went to take Syria. Iran, Hezbollah, etc., was there, and Russia came in with some real firepower, and they put together a coalition. I mean, if you think about it, in Syria, Russia was part of the axis of resistance. We can make an argument worldwide that the axis of resistance includes Russia and China, in that China is economically backstopping Iran, economically backstopping Russia. So, wherein China has the economic wherewithal to hold up some of these other countries so that the U.S. can't use its economic machinations to take them out. So China is economically a very, very powerful part of the axis of resistance. But this is a worldwide resistance. I would say it's critical to bring in Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba and these other countries that have withstood.
Even Colombia,
yeah, that have withstood the U.S. We see Bolivia now. Evo Morales, the Bolivian people, kicked out the U.S. occupation when the U.S. overthrew the country, and now Evo Morales is running, and he's going to come back. That's making a point to me. What Evo Morales is doing is making a point to the U.S. empire. You have been defeated, and we will return our rightful leader that we chose to power. All of these things are powerful, but why I think Russia is such a part of it. The U.S. empire, when it came down to it, said, we'll use everything else that we can, but when it comes down to it, we'll use force of arms. If nothing else, we'll use raw, brutal force of arms. And when Russia stepped in with their powerful ability to utilize force of arms, with their nuclear power, they were really the only ones at this point that could say to the U.S., you can't do it by force of arms when it comes to us. The price is too high. And in Ukraine, the Russians stepped up and said, we will use force of arms to drive you off of our border. That's why I think Russia was so critical. But what are your thoughts on my view of, there is a core axis of resistance in the Middle East, but there is has built a worldwide axis of resistance blocks that includes Latin America, that includes Russia, China, etc. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, obviously each of these countries, China and Russia, they are civilizational centers. They're the countries that had states that have been in existence for thousands of years. They are powerhouses in economy and industry. So their relationship with other nations, to compare it to, for instance, a powerhouse like the United States or Germany and how they treat other nations, is what defines in differentiation. Like maybe somebody wouldn't want to say that they are part of the axis of resistance. Yes, maybe you can say that because they're not directly at war, but they don't have to be. The truth of the matter is that China and Russia want the rise of middle powers between them and the West. That with these middle powers being sovereign and strong, will make it that they don't have to, China or Russia, face the West. The West will have to retreat because of the rise of middle powers, and I think this is a good thing. Russia and China don't need to go into war right now with the United States. We don't want to get ourselves into a nuclear holocaust situation. Similarly, up until now, it's a good thing that Iran is not in a direct war with Israel, because look, Hezbollah and Ansarullah and Hamas and Islamic Jihad are doing good. They're doing enough, and Israel doesn't dare use a nuclear weapon in such a situation. So these are important tactical, strategic analysis that we have to think about. Yeah. So the exchange of technology between Iran and Russia and China that is happening in terms of hypersonic weapons, drones, and so forth. That's enough. Russia and China don't have to go to war directly on behalf of Iran. It's enough that they have this exchange of technology with Iran for Iran to become a solid nation that blocks the way of the United States towards Russia and China. And this is the new world that we are, the new multipolar world is going to, the building blocks of this new multipolar world are these middle powers, Iran, Venezuela, South Africa, Algeria. These are going to be the things that mark the beginning of a new epoch in our human history.
And lastly, I'll say this. I believe there is an element of the axis of resistance in the United States. When you look at what's happening now, there are people, and the news does everything they can not to report it, but every day there are people blocking bridges. When Biden and Clinton and Obama had a fundraiser, there were thousands of people outside screaming, blocking, etc. We have now a resistance in the United States, heavy Jewish presence in that resistance, who are saying to the United States government, you've taken this thing too far. We've gone enough. I'll put it like this. Let me put it a different way. The U.S. empire, this monster, always masquerades as the pretty girl. You know what I mean? As the damsel in distress. It's beautiful, number one, right? It's so pretty and kind and gentle. And it's under attack by all these evil forces. Oh, I must be defended, right? It's always the damsel in distress. And it says,
yeah, it's Marilyn Monroe and the wind blowing
exactly.
Under her skirt.
This is the U.S. empire. We're doing good things.
Such
and we're
a
just
bad
these
wind.
innocent people. But it's being, and I think this is the way I like to put it, it's being exposed so that now the people are looking, saying, we thought you were a beautiful damsel in distress. My God, you're a brutal and vicious monster. And I think that in the West, there's a resistance that at some point, look at what happened with George Galloway, that as soon as the people get the chance to make their voice heard, they will make their voice heard, that the ruling elite in the West are the ones that are getting isolated from their own people and isolated worldwide.
Yes, and I just was remembering as you're talking about this, we watch all these Jewish American activists disrupting speeches by different politicians. I saw a video yesterday of Hillary Clinton getting disrupted. And, tell you what, I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting sick of it. You know why? Because all these activists for 2 decades have been venerating the Iraqi journalist that threw his shoes on George W. Bush. And now they have a chance of all these genocidal war criminals appearing day in, day out in the United States. And all they can do is scream and disrupt and get kicked out. Carry a shoe and throw it. If you're a Jewish American that claims that this Holocaust in Gaza does not represent you, or the politicians in the US don't represent you, throw that goddamn shoe. This is the least I expect from people that want to take action, because it's becoming, ridiculous, these performative disruptions. Either that or shut down the event completely.
Exactly.
There's nothing, and so, my expectations are low, honestly. I don't have much hope in revolt or revolution, change in the West. This is why us here, we're concentrating on our power, on how to liberate ourselves without having to depend on anyone in the West. But if truly anyone in the West that wants to change, they better be taking action, not just these symbolic things. One last thing I will say, and then we're going to end it.
Right.
The Zionist freaks are trying to bring Armageddon on right now. They have, genetically modified cows to become these red heifers. I don't know if some of our viewers know the story, the religious story behind this. Well, when Moses and the and the Jews with him got lost in the desert, supposedly, this is of course all if you believe in these things, but the story is that they reverted to worshiping Baal, the god of the Canaanites, the bull. And when they returned to Judaism, Moses told them that they had to sacrifice a cow for God to forgive them. And they asked Moses, how old the cow? What size the cow? Every time he gave them a description, they would ask him another thing. Oh, how long its hair? How big is its horn? It became to the point where the cow had to be red with short hair and this and that and that. That there was no cow like that on earth. So since that day, they haven't been able to sacrifice this specific cow because they're crazy. They asked for too much detail. And now they genetically modified these cows in the United States and flew them into Israel. And they want to sacrifice them this month on the Mount of Olives, just overlooking the Aqsa Mosque. And they're going to throw the ashes of these cows into the waters in Jerusalem to purify themselves. And then to go into the mosque and demolish it and build a temple, all in the next week or two. So we're at the edge of these fanatic crazies causing Armageddon, not because there's such thing as Armageddon, but they are creating it. They're making it happen. Whatever you may think about Judaism as a religion, clearly it is not this.
Yeah. Let's not forget freepalestine.video. That's the important website that you need to go to. It's freepalestine.video. Laith and his people are doing some great work there, and they're providing English language information, English language documentation for people in the West that they can see and read and hear and understand what's going on. Of course, they are under attack by the empire, and they're going to need people to donate. So go to Free Palestine Video today and donate such as you can, even if it's only a few dollars. If 1,000 people donate $1, that's $1,000. If you can afford a lot more, certainly, but if we can get a volume of people, that can keep this thing going. They need computers, they need equipment, they need, certainly they have to pay for websites, etc. So freepalestine.video, that's how you can help the cause. That's how you can help get the word out. Laith Marouf, thank you very much. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. That's it for Laith and I. And don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms.